The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hi guys, it's Bill here. I wanted to give some people some time to enter into the webinar, so we'll give it a good 2 to 3 minutes. Okay guys, thank you for joining. My name is Bill Drosos. I'll be taking you through using the Render Studio in Creo 5.0. One thing to note that the Render Studio actually uses the KeyShot render engine. So any of you guys that have used the KeyShot software or have seen it, you know the power and ease of use of it. And some of that is integrated into Creo 5.0 as well. A little bit about Boundary Systems. We are technology leaders. We are partners with PTC, Autodesk, eTraj, and others. At one point, we're one of the 16 fastest private growing companies in Cleveland. Some capabilities of ours include product lifecycle management, data management, CAD design and consulting, simulation and product development. The agenda for today, we'll cover viewing the colored model or assembly, using the real-time render with perspective view enabled, using the appearance menu, editing color material shaders, editing material class and subclass, applying scenes, editing scenes, adjusting environment settings, switching between environments, adjusting reflectivity, reflection, refraction, and shine, adding bump maps and adjusting height and scale, adjusting real-time settings, choosing lighting presets, product, interior, full simulation, and custom, using self-shadows, global illumination, ground illumination, caustics, adding lights to scenes, applying physical lights and rendering and render settings. All right, so from here we'll jump right into Creo. And the first thing I want you to notice is that we have the assembly, the flashlight here. Before we go into editing any of the colored shaders and adding materials to those and textures, notice that the different parts of the assembly are given their own color. So for instance, this red shader on these surfaces and on the side here in the back around the buttons will be the wood grain. The green shader that we see here will be edited to a rubber, as well as these buttons. This blue color shader here will be used for a hard black plastic. And then we also see that we have these colors here on the rim of the flashlight at the top. And then the bulbs here are yellow. We'll actually use a glass material for the bulbs as well as the lens for the flashlight. What's kind of nice about the Render Studio in KeyShot is that you can access the Render Studio from the Applications tab and click on the Render Studio to get within the environment, right? And you can add scenes from here and edit your scenes. But what's nice as well is that I can actually get right into the environment in real time from here. And to do that, to view the model within a scene, I would have to click on the perspective button here and go to the rendering options and choose ambient occlusion and the background, scene background. And once I have that, I can go to the view tab, go to my scenes, and I can jump right into a scene. So I can go into the studio scene here, right? And notice again that I can only view the scene in this normal environment here, the modeling environment, if I have this perspective button selected. If I deselect it, you won't see that scene there. So you have to have that selected. Okay, so from here now, I'm going to go right into applying materials. So I'll go to Appearances here in the ribbon, in the View tab, in the Appearance group, right? And you'll see that all of the color shaders that I've added to the assembly are being shown here in the model group, right? So I'll go to the Edit Model Appearances, and you'll see that we have all the colors on our assembly from blue to cyan, green, orange, purple, red, yellow, white, right? So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to apply the first material here. So I'll go into blue, and I'll change the class to paint. I actually want to apply a metallic paint. So I'll change the class to paint, and I'll change the subclass to metallic, right? And I'll change the base color to gray. So I can enter a value for red, green, blue here, right, for RGB. I can even use the color wheel. So in this case, I'll select here in the center of the color wheel, and I'll drop this down to a gray. All right, and I'll choose my gray. That looks good there. I'll click OK. Right, you can see that we have these little flakes showing for that metallic paint. I can increase the scale so that we can blow those flakes up and increase it. It makes it a little bit easier to see those there. I can change the flake color as well. So I can grab that square there and say, hey, I want the flakes to have a little bit of blue in them. So I can add some blue there. Right. Click OK there. I can adjust the reflectivity of this, diffuse, the glossiness. I'll keep those where they're at right now. But you can see now that because we have this shading with reflections turned on here, we can see the material applied. If we didn't have that on and we had this off, typically you wouldn't see it. We're able to see it, so that's good there. All right, so we have that selected. There it is there. There it is with the reflections turned off and you can't see the material, right? So we have to go back, turn on shading with the reflections, and we can see it. All right, so we've applied that gray metallic paint color. So we'll change the name from blue to metallic paint. All right, and the next thing that we'll do is we'll add the wood grain to this red shader here. So we'll select the red shader. We'll adjust the class to wood, and we'll change the subclass to varnished, and we'll change the type of wood to birch. All right, so that's not the result that we want right now. We'll have to do a little bit of work to get this where we want it. So I'll go into the base color, and I want to have kind of a deep red color. So I'll drop that down here. That's pretty good. I'll go to the second color, all right, and I'll drop that down a little bit as well. And you might have to zoom in there to see the results that you're getting. That's too dark, right? That's a little bit better. Okay, we can change the rotation of that texture of the wood grain. So if I grab the slider here, I can rotate it around and get different results, right? I'm going to kind of bring it back to where it was right there. We can adjust the scale. Right now it's at 3. We can bump that up, but as you bump that up, you're kind of zooming in on that texture, so you're not going to see the wood grain as much as if you zoomed out. So we'll bring that back to where it was. We'll enter in 3. You can just adjust the diffuse color, reflectivity, and glossiness. That's about where I want it right now. All right, so we'll rename this from red to wood, right? And now we're going to find the green shader up here, and we'll edit that. We actually want the buttons here on the top of the flashlight head to be a rubber material. So we'll change the class to rubber. All right, and we'll change the color to a dark gray. So again, we'll just kind of click here in the center of the wheel and drag this guy down till we get the correct, there it is. That looks pretty good. Okay, one other thing that we can do now is we can apply what's called a bump map. So these bump maps allow us to apply a texture that will give it a texture with depth. So it'll actually look like it's a real material. So we'll use the cellular bump map for this one, and you can see that this is scaled up too much here. That's scaled up quite a bit. So we'll change the scale from 100 to 10. All right, and that looks a little bit better, right? Looks more real. I can zoom out and zoom in and see that texture there. I can zoom in on the buttons and see that there, and that looks pretty good. I might want to give it a little bit more depth. So if I zoom into the buttons here and go to height, I can enter in 10, right? And you can see it gives it a little bit more contrast there, a little bit more depth with the darks in the depths of those cracks there. I might not want to go that deep, though. I might change this to 5. All right, and that looks like it's a little better. I might even want to bring it down a little bit. That's good enough. I'll leave it at 3. Okay, so the next thing that I'll do is I'll apply a cyan. I'll go to the cyan shader here, right? And I'm going to make that a hard plastic, so I'll change the class, right, to plastic. Right, I'll change the color here. I can make that black as well, and you can fool around with even adding a little bit of color. I can make that a really dark blue if I want it. All right, so let's do that. All right, so we'll call that hard plastic. All right, and you'll see here that we also have some of this this orange trim around these buttons here. I want that to be a chrome trim, as well as the housing for the battery down here. So I'll select that green color, and so you guys can see the idea is to apply your colors to your model first and lay them all out, and then when you want to actually go in and edit those and apply materials and textures to those, you can just grab those colors and edit them and rename them. All right, so we'll go into that orange color there, and we'll change it to metal. So underneath class, we'll change it to metal. Right, and we'll change the color here, and we'll just make that a light gray, maybe bump it up a little bit. That looks good there. All right, so we'll zoom in and view the results. So you can see, again, it's nice that you can view these results within your modeling environment as long as you have that perspective button push and you have that on the shading with reflections, right? You can actually view the shading with reflections and view the materials, right? You can view the paint material, the metallic paint material with the flakes. You can view the rubber with the cellular bump map. We can view the wood grain here, right, and that chrome material and trim around the buttons and the battery housing. So it's starting to kind of come together here very quickly, right? So that's the power of the render engine that we're using from KeyShot. All right, so from here, what I'll do is I'll just go to the purple shader, this purple color up here on the upper trim around the lens of the flashlight, right? And I'll change that to metal as well, right? And I might even make that blue just a little bit too much there. We'll keep it there, right? And now we'll adjust the actual lens, right? So we want this lens here, and if we want to actually, if it's easier for us to just pick the shader to bring it up here, we can use the eyedropper, right? So if I want, instead of having to search within the model group here for the list of materials, I can click this eyedropper here, and then I can select that shader, and it'll actually take me to the correct one, which is this one here. It's supposed to be pink, but you can't see it right now because of the shading. Okay, so from here, what we'll do is we want to make this lens covered glass, of course, right? So we'll change it from glass, or we'll change the class to glass, so it's already on glass, so that's good. All right, we'll select that. We'll maybe make it brighter here a little bit. We'll make this, give it just barely a touch of blue there. Click OK. All right, so we'll change the name to lens, right? And now we'll grab, last but not least, we'll grab the yellow color here for the bulbs within the flashlight. And again, we'll change the class to glass, right? And we'll change the color. Right. Looks pretty good there. Okay. There's also this refraction index, and you can change this for the lens as well. But this refraction index is the index that controls the amount of light that's bending and refracting within the actual material. All right, so we'll bump that up a little bit to 1.5. Okay. Click close. Right, and again, notice how quickly we went through that and apply these materials. So we start off with something that looked very, very just generic and flat, kind of just crazy looking with all the different colors that we have added to the model. And we very easily went into appearances, edited the model appearances from the model group, right? We applied the materials to them, and what we got was this result. So very quickly we were able to concept out and kind of get a good look and feel for how we want this flashlight to look. Also, again, right here within the View tab, we have scenes, and we can go through. There's many scenes in here that we can try out. I just happen to use this studio environment because I like it. You can also click Edit Scene. And within the scene editor, there's the environment tab. Okay, so this environment tab allows me to basically manipulate my environment to get it where I want it. So if I have my flashlight positioned here, for example, but I want these wood planks, right, this wood floor to be more behind the model directly, I can do that. So if you go over here to rotate, I can grab the slider and move that slider to position that scene behind the model where I want it, right? I can also adjust the height and the zoom to position it, right? You can zoom in and out there. I'll keep that right there where I want it. All right, so I'll close out of this. So in order to actually create a rendered image, you need to go into the Applications tab and click on Render Studio. Right, so you'll see we're entering in the Render Studio environment here. Right. So now that we're in the actual studio environment, you'll see that there's some lag time because what's happening is there's real-time settings that are being applied to this scene, and Creo has to actually, and the KeyShot render engine has to calculate all these settings. To view those settings, you'll go into real-time settings, right? And notice that you have some lighting presets in here, right? So if I drop down this node, you'll see we have performance mode, basic, product, interior, full simulation, and custom. The lowest quality is the performance mode, and the highest quality is the full simulation. Now notice if you click on full simulation, we won't do it now, but if we did, it would take quite some time to render out that image and calculate it. And then there's custom, and custom allows you to enter in your own values for ray bounces, indirect bounces, shadow quality. It allows you to check off whether or not you want self shadows, global illumination, ground illumination, caustics. Right, so ray bounces basically deals with the calculation of light rays that are interacting with your model and it's basically trying to simulate that as if it was a real model in the real world. Right, and then you have your indirect bounces. Your indirect bounces are basically the light and colors that are bouncing off of each other and reflecting. So a good example would be, if I open up this image down here of these spheres, you'll see that we have 3 spheres. We have this orange colored sphere. We have this deep red colored sphere with these light colored red flakes, and then we have this green sphere here. So that indirect bounce and the indirect illumination basically allows for the interaction of the lighting and color between objects in your scene. So a good example of that is we have this green sphere here, and you'll see that reflected green light here. Might be hard for you guys to see in the webinar, but it's being reflected right here on that orange sphere. Okay, and of course the shadow quality, if you increase this, the quality of your shadows increase, but for the sake of the environment that we're in, so it doesn't lag that much, we'll just keep it at 1. So what I'll do is I'll bump up the ray bounces to 24, and the indirect bounces to 24 as well. And this global illumination works with the indirect ray bounces. They work hand in hand. So the more indirect ray bounces you have, the more global illumination you have. So the more interaction of light and color between the objects in your environment. All right, and then caustics will also turn on, and that's going to deal with bending, refracting of lights within your materials that are translucent, right? Like your glass lens cover here on the flashlight and the bulbs. All right, so we'll click OK here, and we'll keep those render settings. All right. Okay, so we'll go back into scenes here, and the next thing that we'll do is we'll go to Edit Scene. We took a look at the Environment tab before we went into the Render Studio environment, but now we'll take a look at adding a light. So there's times where you want to add lights to focus in on certain parts of your model. In this case, I'm going to use a spotlight to focus in on the wood grain to kind of illuminate that wood grain to make it stand out a little bit. Right? So add a spotlight here. I'll click Spotlight, and I'll drag the circle here of that light, and we'll drag it up, and where I place that circle on my model is going to be the focus point. So I'll place it there on the wood grain, right? And there's also these rotation handles that I can grab, and I can rotate this light and position it where I want it. I'll zoom out a little bit to make it easier for me to see where this light is. I'll grab that handle there, rotate that over. All right, that's good. I'll zoom in just a little bit. Okay, so from here, we also have the ability to, we can adjust the intensity of the light here, the angle, focus, all this stuff. But we can also apply a real world physical light. So I can select this checkbox here, all right? And there's lighting presets. You can see I have a 60-watt incandescent bulb there. I want to actually create a user-defined light, so I'll select the user-defined option there. And there's color temperatures as well for your lights. So I'll actually bring mine down here to cool white fluorescent, right? And then here, from here, I'm actually going to increase the intensity of the light, but because we're using these physical real-world lights, we're dealing with the wattage here, right? So I'm going to increase the wattage here from 60 to 200. Now that's quite a lot, right? But you can see that when I did that, it illuminated this top portion of the flashlight here, and the wood grain in this portion of the flashlight are actually more pronounced. They're brighter, they're showing more, right? Okay, I can adjust the focus of the light as well, right? So with these sliders, I can zoom in and out, and you'll notice that when I do that, that arrow here is getting more narrow as I focus in, right? And I can adjust the angle of the light. So if you look up here at the light, when I adjust the angle, that will also either focus in the light or it'll expand and kind of spread out the light. All right, so that looks pretty good. So you can see that, we've taken some time here to go through this, but it hasn't really taken that long for us to start to really, to play around with this and experiment with the different lighting. All right, so I'll click close here. All right, and we'll zoom in. We'll zoom into our model. So we can sit here and wait a little bit. All right, we'll zoom in a little bit further to the model. And you can see with my computer, even though we're going to render out a very high quality image, in the real time right now, it's not taking that long to render. It's not taking as long as I would have thought it would have. All right. So if we wanted to actually render out an image now from the Render Studio, what we would have to do is we would have to go into Render. Right. So I would click this button here. All right. And then we have options right to browse to where we want to save the image. We can click Browse here and then select the directory or the folder to save the image. Right. We can also adjust the format. So right now we have JPEG. I can change this to a TIFF image if I need this to be a little bit, if I need it to be really, really high res or, a large image. Because I'm using 24, a value of 24 for my ray bounces, I want to use at least 24 for the maximum samples here. So I'll bump this up from 6 to 24. And also notice that we're using the real-time settings that we created. So if I grab this render settings plus sign here, you can see that when it renders out the image, it's going to be using ray bounces with a value of 24, indirect bounces with a value of 24, and a shadow quality of 1 with the self-shadow box selected, the global illumination box selected, and the caustics box selected. Okay, so to render out this image, we would now just click on Render. But we don't have to do that because I already have an image rendered out for us to view. So I'll come down here to my images, and I'll select this photo, and you can now see the quality of the photo that we got. So again, we have this studio background here that we're in. We have the metallic paint texture here, but notice that I don't have the flakes quite zoomed up as high as I do in the image that we have now opened up in Creo, but nonetheless they're there. It's just a little bit harder to see. We have the wood grain here as well, right? So that looks nice. Then we also have the rubber texture here with the cellular bump map applied. So you can see that that gives the rubber look, some real life texture. All right, and then we have the chrome finish around the buttons. We have a spotlight that's applied that's giving us some shadows here underneath this edge and some shadows below this ring here on the flashlight, this adjustable ring. All right, so that looks good. Yeah, so that's a quick example of basically, working with the Render Studio in Creo 5.0. So I hope that you guys got a really good taste of what you can do within the studio. Applying your colors first, going into the View tab into Appearances and editing those colors to add materials and textures. How you could kind of view your render in the modeling environment if you have that perspective button checked. Also, opening up the Render Studio environment, adjusting your real-time settings to increase your ray bounces, your indirect lighting, checking your boxes for shadows and caustics for the lens refractions, and your global illuminations, so you get colors and light bouncing from an object to an object. So yeah, so that's basically, you know, the focus of this, and I hope that you guys got a really good look at that and have an idea of the ease of use of the software as well as the power of the render engine. Okay, so let me open this back up. All right. Yeah, so what I'll do is if you guys would like at some point, whether it's today, tomorrow, next week, or anytime in the future, if there's anything that you want to ask me about regarding the webinar that you saw, please feel free to give me a call. Again, my name is Bill. You can call me at 216-469-9561. You can always, you know, shoot me an email anytime you want. Feel free. My email is my first initial last name at boundarysys.com. And yeah, so that concludes the webinar today, and I hope to hear from you guys soon with questions or ideas or anything that you want to know about, whether it's rendering within KeyShot or anything for modeling. And that's it. Thanks a lot.